Welcome to the Chevy Florida Insider Fishing Report, presented by Yamaha.
Hello and welcome to the Chevy Florida Insider Fishing Report. I'm Lauren Bolander along with Captain Rick Murphy. Now, Rick, we sure had a nice time getting the season started last week, huh?
You know, Lauren, we have, and the great part is you did a great job in the first week, but I'm going to tell you, we got 25 more weeks of fun ahead of us, and I'm very, very excited about it.
Absolutely. Let's get right into it. This is tonight's lineup. This week it's all about Cobia. We will have our 9 captains from across the state, as always, helping us out with that. And Navionics will be zooming in with Rick on the charts of the Panhandle region. He's going to give you some helpful tips on that area. And we have a very special guest tonight from Chevy who's going to give us a sneak peek on their latest from their tackle bag for 2013. And as always, we'll head over to the workbench, this time to welcome Dave Farrell back to the show for his very first one of the year. Hey, Dave.
I'm happy to be back. Happy to be here with the Chevy guys because they're going to give me a truck. They don't know it yet. They're giving me one.
You just gave away who our special guest is.
Huh?
Oh, man.
Yeah.
You know, they have, you know, in Cobia fishing, Lauren, as you know, which is what we're going to be talking about tonight, they have a jig called the ding-a-ling jig, and I think he's over at the workbench. But, you know, the one cool part about Cobias is that it's a fish that we find throughout the whole state. And with finding it, it's also a fish that is considered an inshore fish as well as an offshore fish. As you can see, Justin Ritchie from the mid part of the state on the East Coast, he's fishing for big cobias out of a kayak. Our second guy that we have here is the late John Thompson. This guy worked on a shoot with Sportsman's Adventures in 2011, and he caught these 2 cobias, a 47-pounder and a 48-pound cobia. And then we have Elise Autry from Melbourne. And you know, the great part about cobias is they're very friendly. We got a lot of cool nicknames, which a lot of the captains will refer to, the brown clown, ling, cobias, and all this other stuff. And then we have Brittany Novakowski from Cape Canaveral. And as you can tell, the girls love to catch them, kids love to catch them. They can be caught inshore, offshore, and, you know, we got a lot of stuff to cover, so let's get with it.
Let's do it. I actually think it sounds like Dave may have inspired a few of those nicknames.
Oh, yeah,
We'll have to find out about that. All right, let's get straight to the Panhandle region. From the Alabama line south to Gulf County, Captain Pat Deneen has all the info that you need. Now, Pat, can you tell us why is it that you're getting the most consistent cobia catch right now?
The springtime is early April, and we've had really good weather for it. Southeast winds, which are perfect for the migration. The fish are swimming east to west. And the cobia anglers in the Panhandle are passionate, to say the least, about it. And for the past week, the fishing has turned on in a great way. Monday was probably the best day of the week, with all the boats doing very well with numbers. But really more significantly, the Navarre Pier and the Pensacola Pier, they both, I think, posted like 14 fish off of the Navarre Pier and I think 18 off the Pensacola Pier, which means they saw a lot of fish swim by. So the fish are definitely up here right now, and it's been very good. We usually start finding them in late March. They show up all through the month of April, and by early May they're starting to taper off a bit. And then in the summer we'll find them on our reefs and wrecks, and then we get another push of them in the fall as they swim back to the South Florida. We'll catch them out deep on the wrecks while bottom fishing and whatnot. Like I mentioned, the best conditions are strong east winds and abundant sunshine, because we strictly sight fish them up here, and the fish are swimming to the west. That east wind pushes the fish the way they want to swim. They get up on the top and they ride the swells. And if you're going to sight fish them, you're going to need some good quality sunglasses. And by far the choice is the Costa Del Mar 580 with the amber or copper colored lenses. I'd say that's probably the most popular sunglasses in our area for them. The baits of choice would be a live eel first, with a variety of finfish next, mullets, pinfish, even mingo snappers, ruby red lips. And then lures of choice would be a ding-a-ling, a 1 to 2 ounce ding-a-ling jig, and maybe a chartreuse or a bright orange color. And then the soft plastic, like the hoagie eels and whatnot, are getting much more popular. Average size fish, 30 to 40 pounds. This past week there's been quite a few fish over 60 pounds, a few over 70. And I know of 2 or 3 that are over 80, which are nice big ones. There's a photo there of Scott Burke. He owns Jughead's Live Bait in Destin. And he was out fishing Monday and boated that 85-pounder solo fish and caught it on a live mullet. And if you ever see a big cobia like that eat a mullet off the surface, it's a sight to see.
All right, Pat, before we go offshore, let me get a second. I'm going to cover the Navionics from your region. Now, guys, what we're talking about here is we're talking about the Destin Pass. Now, understand the way this works is in this Navionics chart, what we have is we've got obviously the landmass and the beach. Now, these cobias love to follow the landmass. They love to swim down the beach. When they get right here on the inlet, looking at the sonar soundings, they go in and around that and then continue to go on down the beach. Now, Captain Pat told me the best time to fish there is certainly on the incoming tide because it's going to push them closest to the beach. Remember, if you are there and there is an outgoing tide and there's a few cobias that are swimming, remember it's going to have a tendency to push them offshore, but the dirty water could help you get a bite. All right, Pat, let's go ahead and continue and give me your offshore stuff.
Yeah, well offshore, Rick, the bottom fishermen are targeting and catching good numbers of big vermilion snappers, or locally we call them mingo snappers. I spoke with Jeff on the swoop, and they've been fishing the natural bottom, 180 to 220 foot of water, Mingo Ridge, Southwest Break, and they're catching 2 to 3, sometimes 4-pound mingos on cut squid using a 2 to 3 hook chicken rig, 2 to 3/0 circle hooks on your rig. They drop the lead all the way to the bottom as they drift or hold up over the natural bottom, and then crank it up 4 to 5, maybe 8 times, get it off the bottom, and then hold your rod tip up high. You feel the tap of the bite, lower the rod tip, and then just stay tight and start winding. And those fish are really good to eat. In fact, I think they're probably one of the best eating snappers that we have, comparable to y'all's yellowtail snappers.
All right, let's go ahead and go inshore, Bubba.
Inshore, Rick, the Spanish have moved in a huge way throughout the region. I mean, from Port St. Joe to Pensacola, they're definitely catching Spanish all along the beaches and inside the inlets and bays, especially on the incoming tide. Trolling gotchas or a multi-hook straw rig, like it looks like a big sabiki rig, is probably the most effective way to catch them. Probably not the funnest way. Probably the funnest way is either with a fly or a spinning rod, by casting a crocodile spoon or a jig or a diamond jig. If you're fly fishing, a clouser or a streamer is the way to go. And if you don't have a boat, you can catch them off the piers or off the beach over at St. Andrews Park in Panama City. They're catching plenty of them right off the sand inside the pass. The fish are running 14 to 20 inches, and they're pretty good to eat if you keep them fresh and don't freeze them, or stock up for marlin season. Now's the time to load the freezer with marlin baits.
You know, Pat, last week you talked about the sheep's head. That still bite going really well?
Yeah, the sheep's head, Rick, are still biting well, particularly in Pensacola and over in Port St. Joe. The folks at Hotspot say they're having a hard time, in Gulf Breeze, they're having a hard time keeping live shrimp because all the guys targeting the sheep's head in the pass are around the rock piles and the jetties. And then Captain Brent Remedy over at Blue Water Outriggers in St. Joe, he says that they're doing very, very well in St. Joe Bay, fishing 10 to 20 feet of water with a live shrimp on a bare jig head around structure. The sheep's head are running 3 to 5 pounds and really numerous, and they're good eating fish as well.
All right, Pat, way to start us off on our second week talking about cobias, very popular fish in your region. I'm going to go ahead and get to the Blue Water Outriggers hotspot from the Panhandle region. Inshore, Captain Pat saying sheephead in St. Joe Bay in 10 to 20 feet of water on structure using live shrimp on a jig head. And then offshore, he's saying cobias along the color change and half a mile on live baits and jigs.
All right, Rick, and the Chevy Florida Insider Fishing Report is going on tour. Come out and meet Captain Rick Murphy and the gang at Blue Water Outriggers in Port St. Joe, Florida, April 12th and 13th. If you're in the area, make sure you stop by. All right, gang, next we're going to head to the Northeast region. That's where we find Captain Russell Theron. Now, Russell, even if Mama calls you for dinner this time, we'd really love it if you could tell us about the cobia in your area before you go.
Oh, I know it. I apologize for that. I got so excited talking about the cheese grits and the whiting. I jumped up and disconnected the phone from my report. So we won't have that happen this week. You know, one of the best things I love to talk about is definitely the cobia fishing in our region. Now, as soon as the water temperature starts approaching 70 degrees, the cobia are going to show up on the offshore reefs and wrecks. And that's already happening now south and east of St. Augustine. Some of the fish are already showing up just south of St. Augustine. They're in that area right now as we speak. Now, what they're going to do is they're going to move in near shore to feed on the bait, and they're going to follow the bait pods and the rays as they migrate and start moving north. Some of the best times to fish for the cobia, of course, is from right now, April through the first of summer. Now, the great way that I enjoy, and it's a fun way to catch, is to sight fish the cobia, you know. Now, after you see a cobia go after a live bait or a lure, man, you'll know it's a hoot. Cobia love structure. They love to ambush their prey. So look for cobia around the reefs, the wrecks, buoys, some of the shrimp boats, the rays, and of course, the bait pods. Now, when I'm talking about bait pods, you could take a live mullet and throw on that bait pod. He's going to swim down below it, and that cobia could be right there underneath that bait pod, even though if you don't see him. So a lot of times we'll do it just like that. Cobia really like the live baits for like live crab. They like a live mullet. And, of course, it's very easy to catch pogies. You can certainly catch them on the pogies. Typical size cobia in our area run anywhere from 15 to 35 pounds.
All right, what else is happening offshore, Russell?
I talked to Captain Bill Huntsinker and with Endless Summer Charters out of St. Augustine. Now, Bill's saying that the dolphin are showing up on the ledge, and he's also catching some blackfin tuna, but mainly targeting the dolphin in 250 foot of water. And he's doing that on the tide lines where the temperature breaks are 73 to 74 degrees. Now, he said to look for birds, bait, and debris, and he's fishing the clear side of the tide lines. Now, what Captain Bill likes to do is to slow troll skirted ballyhoo and see which lures for dolphin. He said also be sure to rig up with about 8 foot of 100-pound test mono for your leaders. The typical size dolphin that they're catching out on the ledge are running anywhere 8 to 15 pounds now, but as the season progresses, they'll get bigger.
Now, this warm weather, Russell, has it made the red fishing or the inshore fishing kick off?
Well, Rick, actually, our weather last couple of weeks has been extremely cold, but we're expecting it to kick off because in the last week we've had a more than 5 to 7 degrees rise in water temperature, and that is definitely going to stimulate the fish. The low tides this weekend are just before daylight. The redfish have been good at first, first of that incoming tide as they feed on that flood tide. This is also a great time of year to start throwing topwater plugs to use them as search doors to locate the redfish. Now, what you want to do is target the points and grassy shorelines where you've got clean water, and always look for small bait, especially like fingerling mullet running up and down those shorelines. The best action that I enjoy and have had most confidence in is walking the dog, which makes a clicking sound from the twitch of the lure from side to side with short little quick taps from your rod tip. Now, the sound travels real good underwater, and this also is going to draw and stimulate a strike. The rapid skitter walk in the trout or wetfish pattern really work the best. I really enjoy those. Most of the reds are running right now anywhere from 3 to 7 pounds. Now, I've got a great photo here of Catherine Porter and Jim Fuller, and she has a really nice redfish that she caught only minutes after learning how to cast a spinning rod, and this was her first fish ever, and that was a really nice 7-pound red that she took fishing this week.
Well, congratulations to her. Go ahead, Russell. I'm sorry.
No problem. Rick, because you just mentioned about the bite turning on, we've had some weather fronts and some cold situations the last couple of weeks. So we're going to see 70 degrees pop here possibly this weekend. And that's one of the things that we're always keying on during the spring and our topwater bite, to fish for gator trout. The next couple of weeks is going to be the best time this spring to catch a big gator trout in short waters as they warm and as the migrating bait fish return. Some of the best catches are going to come with live mullet and topwater plugs. Now, if you want to use a live mullet under a popping cork to get the trout's attention, or you can use a topwater plug like a storm chug bug or a Rapala skitterwalk in the trout pattern to imitate a wounded or hurt bait fish to get that bite. A gator trout is any trout that weighs over 5 pounds. They'll also run in our area 5 to 7 pounds. I've also got another photo here of Captain Jeff Crabtree with a nice northeast Florida sea trout.
All right, great report, Russell. I'm going to go ahead and get to the strike zone hotspots from the northeast region. Captain Russell says inshore, catch a big drum in the deep holes inshore. You're going to use a half of a fresh blue crab, and you also want to try a fresh live shrimp or maybe even a clam. Sounds like a smorgasbord to me, Lauren. But then offshore, dolphin are in 250 feet of water on the temperature breaks in 73 to 75 degrees, and you want to slow troll skirted ballyhoo.
All right, stay with us, guys. On the other side of the break, we head to the Central West region where Captain Jeffrey Page is standing by to stand by, kind of like Dave over there at the Workbench.
I'm always standing by. Standing by. We're going to show you guys how to catch some of these cobia as soon as we come back. Don't go away. Cobia.
The Florida Insider Fishing Report is brought to you by Chevy. Find new roads. Best parts, best prices. Bennett Auto Supply. Yeti Coolers. Wildly stronger. Keep ice longer. Captain Harry's Fishing Supply Company. The IGFA, Conservation Through Education. Get your hands wet. And Olukai.
Want the power of a V8 with the highway fuel economy of a V6? Yes, sir. 40,000 more warranty miles than an F-150 work for you?
Sure does.
Does the lowest cost of ownership nod the Silverado got help with the decision?
It makes the decision.
Copy that.
Sold.
Chevy Silverado. Now get the best pickup coverage in America with 0% financing for 60 months. Plus, Chevy truck owners can trade up for an additional $2,000 total cash allowance, or Chevy truck owners trade up to get a total value of $7,500.
It's 200 streamlined horsepower of Yamaha forward thinking. The all-new F200 inline 4-stroke. Whether you're an offshore angler, pontoon cruiser, bay boater, or walleye hunter, the responsive and fuel-efficient F200 combines amazing power and versatility in one incredibly compact and lightweight package. The all-new F200. Legendary Yamaha reliability and the freedom of forward thinking.
Looking for some action? You've come to the right place. The Florida Keys and Key West. Yeah.
Now let's take a look at our news and notes from the FWC. On April 13th, Growing Up Wild is at St. Mark's Wildlife Refuge. And also on the 13th, Terrific Turkey, Children in the Wild is in Brooksville. On April 19th, the Youth Hog Hunt is in Highlands County. And on April 20th, the Kids Fishing Clinic is in Naples. You can find more information at myfwc.com. Now it's time for Off the Deep End.
Well, you were off the deep end for last week or down in Guatemala.
I was in
sail
Guatemala.
fishing. But you know what? This week
We
you are
crushed 'em.
here where you belong.
Yes, I'm
in
back.
your home.
How long? We've been doing this a long time. Was it 11 years? 10
or 11 years?
This was 11th year, I think.
You know, and Chevy's been involved since day one, which is lucky for us.
Yes, sir.
But we are talking about rigs and techniques. Tell me about it.
Well, we're talking about cobias, and you know, my parents are in the Eglin area, and so I grew up fishing there, and my brother fishes for cobia a lot, and he called me just this weekend. Just like Patty says, they're catching them really good. But up there, we do it a little different. Like you said, the cobia come inshore in the springtime, and they migrate from east to west, and we get up real close to the shoreline on the really pretty green water, and we sight cast to the fish. A cobia looks like a big brown shark when he's in the water.
Right.
I mean, a lot of people mistake them for sharks quite often when they don't know what they are. But if you're coming up and down that beach, if we have a good wind, any other than a west wind, which might make them go down, they don't like going into the wind. If we have a following wind or a north wind that'll keep them up against the beach, we can catch quite a few, 7, 8, 9, 10 a day, you know, even more. So, and we do it primarily by sight fishing for them. Sight fishing, you usually start with a live bait. Cobias love a live bait. They love any kind of fish. They love the live eel. If you can get a hold of some live eels, you're going to be doing good. And when you want to hook a live eel, you don't want to use a big giant hook. Now you're going to be catching some pretty strong fish. So a cobia has a broad body and a big wide tail, so he can pull really hard. So this is not a place or a time when you want to use a light wire hook.
Right.
You want to use a heavy hook. At the same time, if you're using a live bait like a mullet or a little snapper or a little vermilion or a grunt, you don't want to use a hook that's so thick that it could actually hurt and wound and kill the bait. Because a lot of times you're going to have to cast this bait maybe more than once. sometimes 2 times, sometimes 3 times to get that cobia to eat it. And if you've poked a great big hole in him with a big giant hook, sometimes your bait's going to die. And Donnie Brown calls me the mullet killer because I killed a few.
Big old.
I used well, I didn't use big old hook.
All
I
right,
killed
so
his
Dave,
mullet.
whether you're in the Panhandle or any other place in the state, I know a lot of guys love to jig fish for them. So tell me what your theory is behind that.
Well, you know, the gaudier the jig, the better. I mean, the fellas like to use either a chartreuse or a hot pink like this one. Any kind of octopus-shaped head and or a flathead if you're seeing them on the surface and they're not sinking real fast, you know, and you can use a jig that you don't want to sink as so fast. Also, they like to dress them up with a nice eel tail sometimes.
I gotcha.
If you're not using a plastic tail, sometimes you'll throw a big chunk of squid on here if you can't get them to eat that jig. You go through a progression. You throw a live eel. If you don't have any eels, you throw a live mullet. If you don't have a live mullet, then you throw a live pilchard, whatever other fish, and then you throw a jig. Now, some guys are really good with the jig, and they'll just haul off and throw it right off the bat. You want to use a nice 20-pound minimum spinning rod. This might be just on the light side,
right?
But I like to use lighter stuff. I like to catch big fish on lighter tackle. This is like 12-pound test line. If you use 7-8 pounds of drag.
How do you work the jig? How do you want to work it?
Well, you want to throw. You don't want to. First off, when you cast it, you don't want to hit the fish in the head with it. You want to give him a good 3 or 4 feet out in front of him when you throw that jig to him. And then what I do is I watch the fish. As soon as you throw that jig, and if the fish sees it and accelerates on it, I don't do anything. I let him sweep down and catch that
So you
jig.
stop the jig?
I don't do anything. I let him, he'll pile down and try to get it. If you see the fish accelerate, once that jig hits the water and he doesn't go away and he accelerates to go get it, I won't even move it, because as soon as he gets close to it and I don't see it, I'll jerk it out of his face, and then he might not come back to it. If I let it sink, or I let that live bait or the jig sink when I know he sees it, then I have a better chance of hooking him, because he'll run right to it and grab it. Now, if he doesn't accelerate immediately and he's kind of lethargic, then you just give it some good sweeps, back all the way up almost to the surface and let it fall again. And then when he starts making that run, you let him have it. Let him have it.
It's good to have you back.
It's good to be back.
All right, man. Well, Lauren, you got my back. So where are we going? What region are we going to next?
I'll be glad to tell you, Rick. Now let's head to the Central West region, where Captain Jeffrey Page has been standing by. All right, Captain, I know one of your favorite Jeffreyisms for the cobia is the brown bomber. Care to elaborate on that for us?
Yeah, a lot of guys call them that, brown clown, brown bombers. And, in my West Central region, you guys, cobia is more of an offshore species than it is inshore. But some years, they'll make their way up into our bigger bays and estuaries like Charlotte Harbor and Tampa Bay. But for the more predictable cobia bite, get offshore in at least 100 to 160 feet of water, and you want to fish wrecks and springs that you normally find your snappers and amberjacks on. Captain Chris Seeger's been getting lots of cobia this season, and he's been fishing the same springs that he gets his AJs on. He's using free-line blue runners or big pinfish down on the bottom. And once in a while, Chris says they do come up, and you get to sight cast at them. But for the most part, he's dropping down, and he's getting some big bites. And I have a photo tonight of an 87-pound brown bomber caught aboard tight lines. That's his first mate, Jason Boyles, holding that fish, and angler Art Tasker. Get you some of that, Rick.
All right, let's go ahead. Tell me offshore, bud.
Offshore is other species. Captain Chris says that the kingfish bite is going off. Now, it hasn't moved in close. He says it's 12 to 18 miles out. They're holding in 70 to 100 feet of water, and they're holding, Rick, over the same hard bottom that your red groupers and your snappers hold on, because there's bait stacks down there, and due to the cooler water temperatures, we don't have all those big schools of thread fins and Spanish sardines on top, so the kings have had to change up a little, and they're holding over that hard bottom, showing up in good numbers. He says slow troll a blue runner or a Rapala X-Trap 20 or 30, or you can chum them up with some filters once you've found them over that hard bottom, and you can throw surface plugs or free-lined filters or sardines at them. Fish are averaging 12 to 20 pounds. Rolling inshore, speckled trout. I have to say firsthand, this has been some of the finest speckled trout fishing in my region in years. It's been going on since February. You caught a big trout with me a couple weeks ago. They're still holding strong. in the entire region. Look for these big trout holding on the cleaner grass flats with good current and good water flow, and lots of silver mullet, and now even some pilchards are starting to show up on the flats. Most of us guys are throwing subsurface plugs like the Rapala Subwalk in the number 7 or the Miralure MR19 in green and silver. I've got a photo tonight of Captain Billy Ahlstrom of Bradenton with a 30-inch gator trout, but he's been consistently catching and putting his clients on fish in the 24 to 28-inch range. Look at that trout.
All right, Jeffrey, what else you got inshore?
Species 2, I'm going right back to the cobia. I told you that they come inshore. That's right, one of my inshore species this week is cobia. Anglers have had an incredible late March and early April on cobias in Charlotte Harbor. Captain Matt Haig reports the key has been finding the schools of bat rays or manatees or both, casting free-line hand-picked shrimp in and around the schools and the commotion. And he says the best area has been the west wall from Cape Hayes east to the Myakka River, and it's been real consistent. He's been able to find them every day. This photo is of 2 of his kids, Kaylee and Caden, with a cobia that they caught last week while out fishing with Dad. Real quick, I just want to tell you guys, don't forget, if you're thinking about getting out and getting a new truck, get out there and get you a Chevy truck.
All right, Jeffrey, you've been saying that a long time. Appreciate it. Timing's pretty good, and I'm going to go ahead and get to the Star-Tron hotspots from the Central West region. Inshore, Captain Jeffrey says redfish. Lots of upper slot reds in and around the mangroves and oyster bars on the west side of Lemon Bay. Free-line pilchards or saltwater assassin and violet moon sea shads. And then offshore, red grouper. Look for your fish holding in 140 to 160 feet of water over hard bottom with good bait stacks showing up on your recorder. Sardines are the standard bottom rig was going to work the best.
All right, when we come back, guys, we're headed to the La Jolla region in the Florida Keys. But before we get to that, we are going to welcome our special guest into the studio, Rick.